your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
True, you are a good woman. Then again, you may be the Antichrist.
Hey, welcome, horror fans. Welcome to another edition of the Weekly Horoscope. I'm your host, Jerry, here with my partner, Matt. And Matt, this week we have a great topic. We're going to look at some badass women. And, you know, horror for a long history has had the final girl trope. And the final girls have kind of evolved where they're not just struggling survivors, but actually fighters and warriors and people who have really risen up. And for me, it's kind of marked with Ripley when she gets into that mechanical suit at the end of Aliens in 1986. She moves from final girl into badass, and I think from that forward, history has taught us that horror movies are quick to embrace that a woman can be as badass as anyone, and particularly when she needs to be.
Right. Yeah, it's good to seeing women come out of that old damsel in distress trope, right, and coming into characters that take initiative, problem solve, right, can see things through in the dark, right, as metaphorically speaking. But yeah, you see these characters that aren't just the final girls where they're surviving something, where they're actually moving throughout the movie with character development and showing that they can help solve the problem.
Yeah, we've seen it a lot, particularly recently. Movies like You're Next, and movies like Abigail from kind of a different perspective, and The Hunt. But my favorite spin on this is kind of the movies we have here tonight, and that is not some military trained a woman who brings her expertise in, but just a regular person who is put in extraordinary circumstances and then finds this ability within them. That to
And
me
I think
is
that
the most touchstone, real way you can do it.
right, they encounter some kind of malevolence, and then they have to figure out a way to move forward through it, and still coping with the traumatic series of events that they go through as well. And like you said, there's no like additional or enhanced training that they have that just kind of kicks in. It's kind of like their characters develop through this, and so I think both of these movies were really good examples of that.
Yeah, the survival instinct is strong.
Hmm.
But we're going to start with our first movie of the night is called Revenge. It's 2017, directed by Coralie Farge, and it's a French film, which we've dabbled in some of the French extremism of modern horror. And this movie kind of fits that category, but I actually didn't know this was a French film until recently. Had you seen this movie before? And what were your thoughts?
No, I hadn't seen it, but I really loved it because at first you don't know, it's kind of like has this like art house style to it with a lot of the cinematography, and I'm like, what's going on here? And that the second act, the second part of this movie, it just turns it up, and it just turns it up in the violence, and it's like I couldn't even look away. I was like, whoa, like I didn't think it was going to ramp up to the way it did. If you stick with the movie and you don't take it too serious, because there are some times in the movie where you're gonna have to suspend your belief just for the fun of the movie, some of the ridiculous things that happen.
Hmm.
But I think it's all part of the fun of the movie. You can tell that they were trying to have fun doing a lot of the crazy stuff they did. And so this movie's bloody. Like
Yeah.
there's just a lot of blood in this movie. So if that's not your thing, don't watch it. If it is, this is a great movie to watch.
Yeah, I agree. There's a couple scenes that reminded me of Inside, another famously
Yeah,
bloody French movie.
yeah.
Our movie starts with Jen. She goes on a weekend getaway with wealthy married man Richard to a remote desert home only accessible by helicopter. And Jen is young, sexy. She's presented as a stereotypical shallow bimbo. She knows he's married. She's got the star earrings,
She
like.
says she's from LA where anything can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always very cliche on purpose,
Hmm.
at least in my opinion, because at this point her character has no depth, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You think she's kind of just like a call girl or something.
Stan and Dmitri show up for a hunting trip, but they arrive a day early. Richard had intended that Jen would be gone before the guys came in for their hunting trip, but now they're going to overlap.
It's funny they call him, his name's Richard because he's a dick.
Yeah, and he is.
Right, right. I think they did on purpose. Yeah.
And it like he seems so right away, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's rich and handsome, and you know, I
Yeah.
I get it, but my first opinion of this guy's a total d-bag.
Yep.
The men are all enamored with Jen. They party and drink, and they show Jen in bikinis and walking around, and you know they always focus on like you know her flexing butt cheeks and this and that. And
Yeah.
it's very deliberate and very over the top. She starts sexy dancing, and Stan in particular gets up and dances with her, and you can tell he is very enamored with her.
Yeah. Almost he's intoxicated practically.
Yes. The group produces some peyote, but Richard tells Jen to hide it. And he tells her a story. That stuff is bad news. I heard about a man who sawed his own leg off when he was on it and didn't feel a thing.
Right. So it's the rifle on the wall. Right. That's what as
Absolutely.
soon as I saw it, I was like, this is getting used. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The next morning, when we wake up with Jen, Richard has left to run an errand. And now being alone with Stan and Dimitri, Stan comes on to Jen. And she rejects him nicely. She's trying to, I like taller men. I'm here with Richard. You know, she's not rude or disrespectful. She's trying to keep the peace. But he angers at her rejection and he rapes her.
Yeah.
And what I appreciate about the way this was handled is you don't have to see it.
Yes. Because it's
Right.
uncomfortable enough when he's sitting down, like you see what's happening, right? Like you're like, I mean, I knew where this was going. I was like, okay, I
Sure.
know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
here, right?
And movies can use this as a powerful story piece,
Mhm.
but you don't have to show it. Like,
Right.
it's an ugly enough thing. It's a horrible enough thing. We know what's happening.
Right.
It's all we need.
Right. At a certain point, how much of it is sensationalized for us to watch? Right. We don't need to see it. Right.
And there, you could draw direct parallels from this movie with "I Spit on Your Grave" from 1978, also known as "Day of the Woman."
Mhm.
And in that scenario, I think it's way too much is shown. In fact, it drags on and on and on, and it's just a brutal assault of the senses, and
Yeah.
it's unnecessary for the story.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable, right? It's almost like they're just putting it in your face because, and then they want to say, well, it's art. And I mean, we could get into a whole conversation about that, about why they'd want to do it. But, you know, they'll say, well, it's part, we want to make you uncomfortable. It's like, yeah, but there are other ways to do it without having to be that visceral, right? And
Yeah.
have that on, right?
I mean, I'm uncomfortable that it's happening. You know,
Right.
like, even behind a closed door where you can hear enough to know what's going on. And maybe it's because this was directed by a woman. This was handled with a little more sensitivity,
Mhm.
and I
Possible.
appreciate that.
Well, I mean, I've said this before. I often think sex scenes in movies are unnecessary, period. Right? Like the guy and the girl, they were having a fight. And now they have this like 2 minute sex scene. It's like, did we even need that?
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah. So I think that falls right under that category.
Yeah, it's sensationalism, like you talked about. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, hey, come see our movie, and you will see a lot of nudity.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah. Mm.
What else you got?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Dimitri is aware of what's going on and turns on the TV, turns up the volume, and ignores it. So he doesn't participate, even though Stan invites him to.
Yeah.
But he's aware and ignores it.
Well, right, which is bad.
Yeah.
He's an accomplice, right? He's allowing it to happen.
Yeah. Richard returns from his errand, and you hear him and Stan yelling about what happened, and he's chastising Stan for what he did, and he's angry. But then he goes into Jen and tells her that he transferred money into account for her, and he can get her set up in Canada. He just wants it to go away. He's
Yeah.
trying to buy her off, buy her silence, and not ruffle any feathers. And Jen says, "I call the helicopter. I want to be picked up now." And he kind of is hesitant, and she threatens to tell his wife, which is kind of a bad move. She's at a major disadvantage here. Um, and he slaps her and she takes off. She
Yep.
runs from this house and is running through this barren desert.
Yeah. And this type of situation, you never even know what you're going to do in this type of situation, right? So it's like I feel like the fact that she just like ups and like she wants to get out of there, which is the first thing I think any normal person would want
Sure.
to do, right? She's like, listen, just call the helicopter. I don't care what you're offering. And then he's like, well, that's not going to happen because we'll all go to jail, right? And so there's this kind of like that's kind of why he's trying to bribe her off, and so he's worried about that he's going to go to jail. And as soon as she takes off, right, this is kind of when we enter into the second part of the movie.
Yeah, she takes off and the men give chase. All three of them give chase. And we see her kind of run out of room and come to the edge of a steep cliff. And here Richard really shows his true colors if we hadn't already known. He kind of, hey, I'm sorry I hit you. I was upset. I shouldn't have done it. You're right. Let me call the helicopter. Let's just, let's talk about this. We'll make it all. And he tries to bring the situation down under control. And then when the situation gets calm, he just shoves her off of this cliff, and she's impaled right through the abdomen on a dead tree limb that's sticking straight up.
Yeah.
And I mean, she fell far. This wasn't a small fall, a small cliff. She fell far, and she appears dead.
Yeah, I wrote in my note, Jen is going to need stitches.
Yeah, not anymore though.
No. It's funny that I wrote that and then I see the end, and then at the end I was like, I guess not.
Yeah. And so the men are very callous about what happened. They're just, okay, they go burn her clothes, burn her possessions, try to eliminate any evidence of her ever being there, right? Even though we know a helicopter guy brought her, but we assume he's probably in Richard's pocket anyways.
He'll probably be one of those people that he doesn't, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, right? He's just gonna keep his mouth shut.
So they're going to clean up the body when they go on their hunt. So we cut back to Jen's body, and ants are crawling all over her. We see them crawling into the opening of the wound. Blood is pouring from her onto the sand below, and I mean she seriously looks dead.
Yeah.
But somehow she wakes up, she gains consciousness, and agonizingly snaps the dead branch off and frees herself with it still sticking through her.
Yeah, this was one of those parts in the movie where you have to suspend your belief because she uses her earbuds, throws them at her lighter that's on the ground, grabs the lighter, burns the tumbleweed below her. The tumbleweed sets on fire, it burns the branch enough where she falls off, but it happens so quick where she doesn't cook. So that whole thing is just a carousel of nonsense, right?
My first thought was like, okay, now she is just roasting herself on an open spit.
Right. She just right. But again, you suspend your belief for a lot of things in this movie, and it's just fun because I mean, she would have been dead the moment she hit the ground, that tree, anyways, right? So you have to suspend your belief for that part, and then the rest.
Yeah. It was presented with a lot of brutality. It was a gut punch of a scene. But you're right. Like there's her living and being able to do the things she does afterwards is far from realistic.
You're right. But once you start realizing that about the movie, that it's all like ridiculous, it's just like, they're just having fun with it.
I was going to say that doesn't make it not fun to watch her enact her vengeance.
Yeah.
So she's barefoot, she's injured, and she's against three hunters. So it's completely the odds are completely tipped against her.
Yeah.
When the men can't find her, they start following her blood trail. And another note I made was the blood trail is massive.
Well, this whole movie, all of these people have more blood than any human should have.
My first note was, can she lose that much blood and keep walking on? It seems like it's too much blood, right? But it's a bloody movie.
I watched it on Amazon. I try to watch movies on Amazon when I can, and because I like the trivia. And one of the trivia things was that they kept on set, they kept running out of the fake blood and having to get more. because they just kept overusing it. So they were just using it and ordering more and using it and ordering more.
I believe it.
Yeah,
They used it to good effect, though. I mean,
it's done
every
well.
bloody scene is done to the nth degree.
It's very very good cinematography for the violence. Yeah,
Yeah. They come to a small river, and the blood trail finally ends because of the water. So they decide to split up to find her. She sneaks up on Dmitri, who's standing at the water, and his gun is propped behind him. And she sneaks up on him, gets his shotgun, and turns it on him. But it was a clever ploy by Dmitri, who's presented as kind of like just dumb
this
oaf.
fish. Doo, 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 yeah,
Yeah, but this was actually a really clever move.
yeah. Suddenly he shows a different side to him right here.
The gun is not loaded, so he gets control of her. She's weak. She's lost 60 gallons of blood at this point. She's a giant hole in her abdomen, and he's holding her underwater, drowning her. And she's close to drowning. She can't have much strength left, but she removes a knife out of his belt and plunges it into his eyes.
It reminded, you know what this reminded me of? This is going to be way out of left field because he keeps bringing her down and then bringing her up and talking to her and then bringing her down and he keeps like drowning her and to bring her up. It reminds me of the scene from The Last Kiss Goodnight with Gina Davis, how they keep lowering her in the water and then bringing her back up and then he talks to her and they kind of kept. I know it's the comparison's out of left field. I know, but it just reminded me of the same thing. And then finally, the third time when she comes up, she has the gun and shoots him. And I was like, "Hey, it's the same thing they just did." Like,
Yeah. Yeah, but the knife in the eye, I specifically
I was
thought
like,
of
"There's
you.
the eye scene."
Yep. And it's a good one too because it
Because
really
she gets him multiple times. Yeah,
yeah, she's like super fast in both
yeah.
eyes.
I appreciated that a lot. Usually, it's just one stab and a stick, but this one, like, it was like it was almost like hitting like a tree. Like you didn't go in as far as you thought you would. Like she hit him and then had to go back in again. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a good scene and he ends up with it buried all the way to the hilt in his right eye, and he's
Yeah.
staggering around and he's screaming and he's flailing, and then he falls and dies.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a beautifully done scene in a sick and twisted way. His face now looks like a carved pumpkin, right? It's like bloated, and his eyes are gone.
Yeah, it's all X'd out.
But there's a scene where she takes the knife and pulls it out of his head, and then we see his misshapen head just slowly descend in the water till it disappears. I'm
Mhm.
like, that's a great scene.
It was cool. Yeah, yeah. He had like the kind of the aerial shot looking down at the water. It was
Yeah,
good.
thought that was really well done. She hops on his four-wheeler that he had and gets his supply bag, and she takes off. Four-wheeler runs out of gas, of course. But
Yeah.
like, how was he getting back? Like, he didn't have enough gas either. But she
I
finds
think
a
they had
cave.
some. I think they had some in the Range Rover, but then they split up, or I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. She finds a cave where she can go in, spend the night, and try to recover a little bit. She wants to remove the limb. There's still this, after all this activity, there's still this giant piece of dead tree sticking through the middle of her,
Yeah.
but the pain is too great. And she remembers that she hid the peyote in her locket that she's still wearing.
Hmm.
So the rifle on the wall gets taken down.
Yeah.
She takes the peyote and starts tripping.
Yep.
And she's tripping crazy.
And it's interesting this part of the movie too because I think what they were trying to do is some kind of symbolic form of transformation, right? Like kind of like a phoenix from the ashes kind of thing. Like this is gonna be part of her transformation in character.
Mhm.
Because after this, I think when we see her, her hair color is different, her clothes are different, her attitude's different, right? So there's something here. There's a transformation scene.
Yeah. Her repairing herself is pretty brutal. She burns the knife in the fire that she built and cuts a wider opening for the limb. She just starts cutting her own flesh in like a star cluster. And she pulls the limb out, and she had opened a beer can that she found in there. She drank it, opened it into a flat metal surface, and heated it over the fire, and uses the flat hot metal to cauterize her wound.
Yeah.
Of course, she didn't cauterize the back. which they don't ever address because it went through her. So there's still a giant gaping hole in her back.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
There's a lot to, you got to, like I said, you got to suspend your belief about a lot of this stuff. And yeah, I mean, even when she wakes up, the cauterized wound is like perfect. Like it healed perfect. No
yes.
antibiotics, no painkillers, no nothing. Just a little peyote and just you're good to
Yeah.
go.
She passes out and she wakes up and instead of this ugly mutated scar, she has a perfectly burnt in phoenix
Well, not just
from the
that. I
logo on
thought it
the
was,
can.
yeah, that's the phoenix. That's the phoenix from the ash, right? Like that's kind of on the
Yeah,
nose.
yeah.
But I mean, she also jolts right up, right? And I've had appendicitis, and I'm telling you right now, there's the only jolting you're doing is when you're healing over and throwing up. Like you're not moving, is what I'm saying. You're
Yeah.
like, oh, you know what I mean? Like you can't, even when you wake up out of your sleep, you're like, I can't move, you know, like, but she just out of nowhere can move really fast with her hips. And I was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, she's
Yeah.
badass, right? That's the category.
I know. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We didn't
It's
say it
still
was realistic badass, just
no,
badass.
it's still a cool movie. I don't care. I'm making fun of it, but
Yeah.
it's meant to
No,
be fun.
I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no cuts and scars or anything. It's just a perfect. It
Nope.
looks like a tattoo. It looks like
Perfect.
a
She's good to go.
beautiful
No
symbol,
swelling.
and it doesn't make sense because the logo is simply painted on the can. It's not like a raised. It doesn't make sense, but it was
Yeah,
still
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
So in the morning, she gears up. She's got some lingering effects of the tripping that she has to shake off. But once she's actually awake and actually herself again, she wakes up and she gears up with all the stuff she got out of Dimitri's bag, and she like heads out like she's on the hunt now.
Yeah.
Richard and Stan are fighting over whose fault the whole thing is. Richard punches Stan in the face, and they end up splitting up to look for her.
I thought that was rightfully so when I saw that. When he punched him in the face, even though they're all evil, it's like, oh yeah, he probably he deserves that.
Yeah, he should have
And
punched him in the face and called and had him arrested when he got
immediately,
back.
right,
Yeah,
right. As soon as it happened, right.
yeah. Jen spots Stan and she starts stalking him. He's driving. He's driving the SUV down the mountain cliff roads, and she's following him. And uh, when he stops, he's going to put gas in the. He's got tanks of gas in the back. She shoots him in the shoulder, and now in a role reversal, she's following his blood trail.
Yeah, she's stalking him from behind. Yeah.
He takes a part of his shirt and tourniquets off his shoulder, so he stops
No,
bleeding.
no, it wasn't a shirt. He takes off one of his. He takes his boot off and takes the shoe. Takes his sock.
Oh, the sock. Yeah, you're
And
right.
it's his sock. I remember laughing because I was like, "How is his sock that big? Where it could be a gurney?" Like,
Yeah. Oh, he had a
like
he
it's
had
yeah,
a 1980s tube sock that went all the way up to your knee. Yeah,
yeah. It was
big
huge.
sucker.
I was like, I have work boot socks. They're not that big.
Yeah,
I couldn't wrap it around.
that's
I
right.
couldn't
And
gurney my
but he makes a tourniquet so his blood trail stops, and then he
right.
hides in the hills so that Jen actually walks past him, and then now he becomes the hunter
And
again.
now he's got a bare foot.
And now he's got a bare foot,
Yeah.
which is important because uh, he shoots at Jen, but he only manages to hit her earlobe and knock off one of her star earrings.
Yeah.
So she runs off and she takes her flashlight and breaks the glass from the front in the road. And as he approaches her, he slices his foot badly.
Yeah.
It's a nasty
It's in
gash.
there. It's in there. Yeah.
And there's a gory scene where he's sitting on the road and he's like pulling it apart and it's just blood everywhere as he's fishing in there trying to pull the glass
It's
out.
squishy. It's a squishy scene. And I had a piece of glass, like it was probably like this big, like as small as you can have it. That was in like my toe. I don't know, like over the summer. Somehow I got it in there. I don't know how, you don't know how it happens, right? Like sometimes you get a little piece. And it took me like an hour to get out. And I watched the scene. I was like, I know how this feels. I had a little, I had the little teeny.
Yeah, he's got a 6-inch gash through the entire
Yeah.
sole of his foot. But yeah, it was a brutal scene. But like most of this movie, it was very well done.
Yeah. Yeah, they go
Uh,
for it.
he gets back into the truck, and now he's going to try to run her down. and he's driving as fast as he can drive. He has trouble getting it started because of
Because of his foot.
his foot is mangled at this point. Uh, but she shoots him through the window and blows the brains out of the back of his head. Just gory, messy.
Yeah.
Uh, Richard can't find Stan. Nobody's answering on the radio. He heads back home. And now he calls for the helicopter to come get him, and he gets in the shower. And while he's in the shower, he hears a noise. So he grabs his rifle that he left right by the shower, and he's stalking through the house naked with a rifle.
Right.
And he's running around and he's looking and he doesn't see anything until he sits on the couch and sits on the remote, turns the TV on, which makes him jump. And then he looks, and Jen is right at the sliding glass window with her gun pointed at him.
And he's like, wait, we can talk.
And she shoots him in the gut.
Yeah.
Gut shots him bad.
Yeah.
Now he's bleeding badly. And again,
at one point, well, when he's first walking around the house stalking, I was like, do we have to have like this guy walk around naked and do this? Like, is this necessary? And then once she gets shot, and he pretty much just spends the rest of the movie bleeding. I was like, I see why they did that, actually. Because if he was drenched in just clothes, right, it'd be all soaked up in the clothes. And I think they just wanted as much blood to fly everywhere as possible, right? So that's why they kind of had him without the clothes. I think that's done intentionally for that reason.
I also thought, usually in these movies, you see nude women running around, and the main character it never gets nude in this movie.
Right.
But, female director, let's have a guy run around naked.
Yeah, you get naked and run around, like, embarrass yourself a little bit, feel vulnerable, right? Yeah.
Kind of that role reversal thing.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a circular path to the house. So he's running, she's following his blood trail, and she's stalking him, right? He's trying to get away. He's bleeding. It's just
cat and mouse stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So he tries to misdirect her. He lets his blood trail go, and then he hides back around the corner.
Yeah.
And he's waiting there, and we see he's got his gun, and she's approaching. He's going to blast her, right?
Yeah.
Except she's moving cautiously, and his blood is pouring out so much that a pool trickles into the hallway in front of her. So instead of stepping into danger, she goes around. And then we have a real circle where he's stalking her and she's stalking him, and they just keep running around in a circle.
Yeah. It's like Wile E. Coyote stuff.
Yeah, he does stop in the kitchen at one point and wrap his torso with saran wrap.
Cellophane. Yeah.
Yeah, which was a pretty good idea. But in this circular chase, they're just in buckets of blood.
The whole house, the entire house, everywhere.
Jen eventually slips and hits her head. And she looks up, and Richard takes his gun and knocks her out.
Yeah, it made me wonder when I saw this blood everywhere around this apartment. I was like, how many takes did they have?
Right?
Or I don't know, like how up, I don't know.
Yeah. You think to shoot that, you better do it right.
Better get it done, yeah. Because
that was a lot of moving and action and different setups.
Right, so like, was it getting bloodier and bloodier as they kept doing takes?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, could be. Instead of shooting her, Richard picks her up, and he's choking her, yelling at her, demeaning her. He's got to make the point of, you got the gall to mess with me. Who the hell are you? And he's pressing hard on her throat, and you think she's about to fade away, and she takes her hand and sticks it in the wound of his abdomen.
Yeah, which is smart. Yeah.
And he falls away, cringing in pain. She falls to the ground, grabs her gun, and then he's up over her, and she's got the gun pointed, and blows it through his chest at point blank range.
I liked how she didn't say any corny line. It was just no hesitation. She just looks him right in the eyes and pulls the trigger. I loved it. I loved it.
And as if there wasn't enough blood already in this hallway. Just,
yeah.
It's just an absolute mess.
Yeah.
Jen walks outside, staggering. You think about the physical toll she has been through. It's unrealistic, but it's just insane.
Right.
All the things her body has been through. She's staggering. She's covered in blood. and we hear the helicopter arrive.
Yeah. And then that's it. We says revenge. That's it. That's end of the movie.
Yeah, I think it parallels some other rape revenge stories, but it's really well done. If you could suspend some of the the unbelievable extremes, it's
Well,
very vicious.
yeah, I mean, some of the inspiration, the director, she said that she drew inspiration from Kill Bill.
Yeah,
And you can see some of that. I mean, Kill Bill is super unrealistic, but who cares? A lot of Tarantino stuff that happens. Those movies are like a lot of great movies are Die Hard and all his movies. Like they're super unrealistic, but who cares?
yeah.
If it's executed properly, if it's done right, like these scenes where these the choreography and the cinematography in this movie for like the fight scene and stuff, I thought was all done really well. It's a fun movie.
I agree. And some movies, some movies you go to suspend belief, to get away from
Yeah.
reality. It's a
Yeah,
great
tell your
escape.
friends, but yeah, be like, hey, you want to see a bloody, messed up movie? Go watch Revenge, 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny, the director claims she had never seen I Spit on Your Grave, where we
Mm.
would draw obvious parallels. She claimed to have no influence and had never seen that movie, which I found was
So, yeah, she
interesting.
probably never had an interest in seeing that, right? Because of like, all the rumors around it, and
Our second film tonight in the category Badass Women is Ready or Not, 2019, directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette, better known as the collective group Radio Silence. Um, and this is a totally different tone from the movie we just saw. In Revenge, we have to suspend our belief for some of the extreme measures that are created. This movie is tongue in cheek and full of intentionally dark and hilarious moments.
yeah, the Revenge kind of like it has more realistic approach as far as what's happening, right? Like the situation the that she's put in, right? Whereas this is just over the top from every premise and every angle, right? The whole movie's over the top,
Yeah.
and it's actually and both movies are acted well. The other, Revenge has good acting. This movie though has a lot of A-list actors in it. There's a lot of talent that's on the set. So it's funny to see a lot of these like A-list actors come in and just kind of make this absolutely over the top dark comedy.
Yeah, and it's funny watching this last night. This same group who was responsible for the movie Abigail that came out earlier this year, and rewatching it, this week I found myself noticing the tonal similarities where you
Mm,
take something serious, you have tense and horrific moments, and then you have absolutely hilarious payoff in certain scenarios, and they definitely
yeah.
have a style to their approach to these movies, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was Adam Brody that he plays Daniel. Yeah, he's a lot of the comic relief. There's a lot to it. I haven't seen Abigail yet.
Oh, okay, you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, all right, good.
Grace is marrying Alex from the wealthy Domas gaming empire, and his family is full of odd and kooky and weird characters, and she really wants to fit in and wants to make a good impression.
Yeah.
On their wedding night, they get married at the family mansion. It's tradition they must play a game at midnight, and you can see kind of the tension in the group as they gather. And there's a fancy room reserved just for gaming. They have to go to the game room, and when they're all seated, the father tells the tale of their ancestors and a game that his great 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 grandfather played, and he was financed by a Mr. LaBelle, which is a thinly veiled, anagram for Belial, another name for the devil.
Yeah,
It doesn't attempt to make it, a mystery.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. Good catch on that. I actually, for all the writing in this movie, I thought that the father telling that story was some of the best writing in the movie. It was pretty cool. It was a
It
good
was very
scene.
good. Yeah, and it
Yeah,
really set the
I kind of
tone
wanted to
for
hear more. I was like, keep going.
yeah, write this book.
Right, right.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was very interesting. And then he presents a old carved wooden mystery game box,
yeah,
and you put a card in, and then you pull it out, and it tells you what game to play.
yeah.
And Grace draws hide and seek, and you can see every face in the room drop down and get very serious. They tell her, okay, you have a head start, and she's like, well, how do I win? And she's like, well, the father says, well, if you haven't been found by dawn, you would win.
Yeah, makes it seem very innocent. And she's like, okay, yeah.
She leaves to start hiding, and the family starts gathering weapons from the wall in this game room. And she still thinks it's a game, but it's really, at this point now, it's survival. Alex is distraught. According to his mom, that card's only been drawn twice in her lifetime.
Right. It never
So
really happens. Yeah.
they weren't really expecting this, but there's always a chance. And now the woman he loves, and he truly does, is going to be hunted by his family through the entire night.
Yeah. At first, he thinks it's just this odd thing that he has to go through, right? And he's like, "All right, yeah, you're gonna have to play chess or something like that." And then no, it turns into this.
Yeah, she's hiding in the dumbwaiter, but gets impatient. Again, she thinks it's a game. At this point, she doesn't know the seriousness of what she's up against. And as she's moving down the hall, like really not caring if she's found, she really like, let me be found. Let's get this over. Let's go to bed. Uh, she's grabbed by Alex and hidden behind a bed in a room. And he's trying to like, shh, you don't understand. And a waitress, or excuse me, one of their servants
Yeah,
walks
the
into the
maids.
room,
Yeah.
and her head is blown apart by the druggy sister, Emily. She's like, I got her, I got her. And then the family comes in and like, okay, she's wearing a white wedding dress. What are you thinking? And it's part of the
Yeah.
dark
Yeah.
humor that,
And then I'm sorry. Yeah, there was a little disturbing. So the dad says something important after that, and you have to catch the line. He says she's supposed to be alive for the ritual. Why would you shoot her in the head?
yeah, yeah, no, very good point. We think they're trying to kill her, but in fact, they are just trying to capture her, injure her. They don't care what kind of condition she's in. They'll shoot her, just not in the head.
Right.
So she hears the family explain how it's supposed to work and all these details. She now realizes what she is up against. Alex says, go hide down towards the kitchen. I'm going to go to the security room and I'm going to help you escape. He's like, the whole house is on lockdown. I'm going to get it open so you can get out. So she's sneaking around. She's cutting around. She's trying to find her way. She opens the door and is standing in front of the entire family. And like she takes like, whoops,
Womp
this
womp.
was the wrong door. And it's kind of
Yeah,
Scooby-Doo-ish, right? Like who comes in and out what
yeah.
door?
Cue the Benny Hill music. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
They start chasing her.
So she takes off, and alcoholic brother Daniel finds her. Every single member of the family has, the one sister's a drug addict. He's an alcoholic. They have like these stereotypical rich family problems. But Daniel really likes
Yeah,
Grace, and actually tells his wife at one point. His wife says she's not one of us, and he's like, "No, she has a soul."
yeah, and he kind of plays that role the whole time. Like he like even like when the father's giving the speech, he kind of like takes a shot, and he's like, "Great story time." Like you can tell there's just certain like malaise that he has about this whole family ritual and what they do
Yeah, and he's, it almost like he's an alcoholic because
because
he
he doesn't want
can't
to deal with it.
stand what
Yeah.
he is and what his family is.
Right, like he's not like the woo taking like he's not like the obnoxious like he's kind of like in his own drudgery just drinking like just to get through this I need a drink. Yeah.
Because he likes her, he gives her a head start before he calls in the others. They all gather, and Emily accidentally shoots another servant in the face with a crossbow.
Which is the dark humor, right? She keeps like, "Why does this keep happening to me?" Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because she's
Emily.
a drugged up moron, is why it keeps happening. But yeah, the
Yeah.
humor is, there's tension, and then it cuts it with something like over the top. It's
Yeah.
really a balance that's well done in this movie, I think.
It's done very well. Yeah.
So Grace takes a shotgun off the wall and ammo, and she's going to she's going through the kitchen. And Alex is in the security room and managed to unlock the doors, but the exit is blocked by a butler who's down there preparing food or whatever.
Who looks like he does UFC.
Yes. And she pulls the gun on him to get out. But he tells her, that ammo on the wall is all fake. So she doesn't have a gun. And he attacks her. And she escapes by, he had just made tea, and she bashes him over the head with a boiling pot of tea and runs. She goes back to the dumbwaiter, and there's a servant hiding in there. And rather than, like, the servant looks scared, so she thinks, okay, here I have, someone in the same boat as me. And the servant immediately calls for the family to say where she is.
She's here. Yeah. Yeah.
So she turns on the dumbwaiter, and the servant's head is sticking out, calling to the family, and is just crushed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now
Very
all the
much
servants.
Yeah, very much like kind of like the scene from Scream with the garage door, how she gets crushed by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good analogy. So all the servants are now dead. Only the burnt butler remains. So she makes it. She makes it out of a window. She jumps out of a second-story window and tumbles into the yard. The windows are now unlocked through Alex's effort to help her to escape.
And then this is another comic relief part because the brother Bradley's sitting there and he's like texting like, "Hey man, what's up? Just doing family stuff tonight." Like he's texting, and you see her in the backdrop just like kind of fall down. Yeah.
Yeah, right by the window. He's oblivious to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she goes and hides in a livestock barn and encounters one of the kids. The kids don't play. They're supposed to be in bed. It's Georgie, and she immediately wants to protect him. She's like, "Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Everything's going to be all right, Georgie." And he shoots her right through the middle of her hand. And in what I thought was a hilarious scene, she just rears back and cocks him. She just knocks the kid out cold. And you just don't ever see an adult just flat out punch a kid like nothing. And she rocks him.
Right. Yeah.
He's out cold. I
Where
thought that was
he
great.
has an actual shiner later.
Yeah, she decked him, right? But she falls through.
It's something you'd see in like Scary Movie. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Her momentum takes her, and she falls through these wooden doors, and turns out she's in a pit of bodies that the family has disposed there over the years.
It's called the goat pit.
Yeah. And she has to climb out, and the ladder out is old, it's rotting, and she has a huge hole in one of her hands. She manages to get out, but at the end, the ladder's falling away. She's struggling to get up. She's bloody, and there's a nail sticking up. And I thought this was great. She has to stick her hand with the hole over the nail to get
secure herself.
Get the proper grip to get herself up, and she does it, and it was pretty badass.
Yeah, it's cool.
She is spotted running through the yard, and the butler goes after her in his car. She gets
like
to
this
the
guy
fence.
again.
Yeah, the MMA fighter. She gets to the fence and manages to break off a piece of metal and slide through, but not without slicing her body deeply in numerous spots as she tries to escape. And of course, an immediate tense scene is followed up by she gets through the fence and is waving down a car on the road, and it's like a Porsche.
Yeah.
And the guy just swerves and beeps at her.
Yeah, get out of the road, lady. Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh my God, the rich are really assholes."
Right. Like I'm covered in blood and screaming for help. And you're like, get out of the road. Right.
Yeah. I thought that was like, okay, this is the way her night's going. She runs into the woods to try to hide, and the butler's chasing her down in the car, and he finds her, and he gets out and he catches her, but she manages to get behind him and choke him out with a piece of her dress. And as always, the mistake, I tell my wife this all the time when we see a movie like this. If we're ever in this scenario, I am making sure that whoever's chasing us is dead. I'm not going to choke them till they pass out. I'm going to choke them till my thumbs come out the back of their neck. Right?
Right.
I'm not leaving this to chance because I know how this works.
What do they call that? A double tap, right? Where you shoot someone to get make sure, right? Yeah, give them the old double tap.
Somebody hits Jason and knocks him out,
right?
Okay, and then runs. No,
right.
Finish him.
Why were there six? Sense. If you were just defending yourself, why were there 6 bullet wounds in his head? You'd be like, I had to make sure.
Have you ever seen any movie ever?
Right.
Like, that's what you need to do.
Right.
So she steals the car and she takes off. And they have like an OnStar type of service. She hits the button asking for help.
I didn't even know
And
that was still a thing.
yeah, I don't know if it is, but it's a fancy car
Yeah.
for rich people. Um, and the guy on the other end, Josh, is starts to help her, and she's like, "Oh, can you do this?" And he's not as helpful as you think he would be. And
Yeah.
then he says, "Oh, wait a minute, this car was reported stolen. I have to shut it down."
It felt like every mobile service customer service I had ever spoken with ever, they nailed it. They call Verizon or AT&T or any one of these. You try to speak with someone, and it's like speaking to a robot.
Yeah. So now the car is completely disabled by the remote service that she was looking for help.
Yeah,
And
she's screaming, crying, and he's like, "Ma'am, calm down," and then just hangs up.
yeah, well, if you're going to use profanity,
Right, right. That's what he says. Yeah,
so now she's stranded in this car that won't run, and lo and behold, the not dead butler shoots her with a tranquilizer dart and knocks her out. That's why you finish him off.
right. Yeah,
She's groggy and her head's spinning, but she comes to. And this part I thought was a little strange because they're still in the car. They're only a quarter mile from the house. Like, how long was she knocked out?
yeah.
60
What kind of
seconds?
tranquilizer was that?
Yeah, I'm going to knock you out for 60 seconds, and that's all
Yeah.
we need.
What did they fill that thing with barbecue sauce? Like,
But she comes to in the back of the car, and this scene was also funny. The butler has been trying. He was humming classical music while he was in the kitchen,
yeah,
and now he's got the family on video screen, and he's celebrating. He's like, "I got her. I'm bringing her back," and he's all proud. And he's got the same like the 1812 overture, and he's got
yeah.
it cranked up, and he can't hear a thing. And they're yelling at him.
Like he's partying.
They can see on the video that she's awake, and they're like, "Turn the music down, you idiot!"
Yeah,
And
yeah.
she double mule kicks him in the head twice, and he just crashes the vehicle. And
Yeah, she also like hits his hand, and his hand like veers the steering wheel off to the left, and they go right into a tree, or they fall over like a little bit of a hill or something.
yeah, so and I thought that scene was kind of
It
funny.
was funny. Yeah, this movie has lots of great humor in it.
She climbs out of the car, and Daniel's there. And it's like, okay, Daniel, gave her a head start. He's even though he's an alcoholic, he likes her. He admires her. She thinks he's going to help her, but instead he knocks her out.
Yeah.
And Daniel and the dad take her back to the house for the ritual. At this point, the family is all wearing cloaks, and they're preparing. They're nervous because it has to be done before sunrise, which is getting close. This whole thing took all night. It didn't go as planned. And they have to pass around a drink from a
chalice.
special
Yeah.
chalice. That's
Yeah.
part of the ceremony. But Daniel had poisoned the drink, and they all start to get sick. And tied up Alex gets loose from the security room, and it just turns into chaos. Charity shoots Daniel as he's protecting Grace.
Yeah.
Grace knocks her out. The father, Tony, comes at Grace, and she smashes him in the head with an oil lamp and then throws it in the corner and starts a fire. Mom, Becky, attacks her and has her down and is choking her out. And you think she's about to go. But the game box from the table, the old wooden game box, she gets her hands on it, and she bashes her head to death with the box.
Bashes her face in. I love it.
just
I love a good
smashes
face bash in any movie.
It was great. Alex comes in and finds her, and he sees his dead mother, and he goes to her, but he has this realization that he's like, goes to touch her, and she steps back, and he's like, we're not going to be able to be together after this, are we? And because of all that's occurred, obviously she's not feeling it. Even though he was tied up he was trying to help her. He willingly put her in that situation, in that risk.
Right, right.
So,
and he tries to explain. He's like, I didn't know it was gonna be hide and seek. It's never hide and seek. Yeah.
right. She's like, but you knew there was a chance.
Right. You knew something. Yeah.
So instead of saving her, realizing that their relationship is doomed, he grabs her and he calls the others. He turns into everything he said he wasn't the whole movie.
Yeah, everything the evil aunt was saying that he was the whole time.
Yes. And the aunt is, she's got like shaved head with spiked gray hair in the middle. It's kind of at an angle.
Looks like a Disney villain.
Yes. She looks like a a little bit like the Little Mermaid,
Maleficent or something like that. Yeah.
Cruella, or yeah,
Someone, all of them. Yeah,
yeah, the
just
evil
a
sea
Disney
witch
villain.
in Little Mermaid is what comes to mind. But
Yeah.
she's just she's a great twisted evil persona for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. She's mean to everyone.
So now they're going to perform the ritual right on the table. Forget the ritual; they got to get it done.
Hmm.
They're holding her. Alex is now the one bringing the knife down. But as he's doing so, Grace manages to turn and she takes the blade in the shoulder instead of in the heart. She rolls and jumps up from the table, and the sun starts coming through the massive windows. She pulls the knife out and she's holding everybody
Yeah.
back.
Yep.
And now the sun is out. And and like there's this moment of tension, like, a vampire movie, they start burning, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's going to happen? What's going to happen? They've never made it to this point before.
Right.
And nothing happens.
Right.
And it's like, oh my God. And
Oh,
the one guy's like, I knew this was
I
baloney.
knew it.
So
It was
like,
all charade the whole time. Yeah.
yeah, was the whole curse phony and this all was for nothing? And the crazed aunt that we were just talking about picks up this big axe, this big medieval axe, and she's angry and she's like, I'm doing it anyways. And she charges at Grace and explodes. she, I love it. She just
I loved it.
bursts.
She was like, I don't care. She's dying tonight. Like we play it's tradition.
If you took 100-pound sack of blood and put a piece of dynamite in it, that's what happened.
It was goopy.
Everybody just, and then they start exploding, each one of them,
Right.
one by one.
There's no sausagey intestines. There's no brain matter. It's just goop.
They're there, and then they're a burst of blood, and they're all gone except for Alex. Alex is there, and he's begging her. See, look, I'm still here. I'm different. I told you I was different.
Yeah.
And she takes off her wedding ring that she just got and throws it at him. And as it hits him, he explodes all
Yeah,
over.
she's like, I want a divorce. Kaboom.
Yeah. So Grace grabs the fancy cigarette case holder that the mother Becky had that she
In the
admired.
beginning. Yep.
She takes it. The place is now on fire. Everybody's exploded into bags of exploding blood goop. And she just walks out, sits on the step, and lights a cigarette.
And you can hear cops coming in the background, I think.
Yeah, the house is burning, sirens approach, and she's just sitting there. In fact, you hear one of the first responders say, Are you okay? And she just goes, In-laws.
Yeah, even to the end.
And that's the end of the movie. It's a
It's fun.
perfectly balanced adventure, blood and guts, humor.
Yeah, they balance it very well. I think it's just the right humor with just the right amount of gore, and it doesn't try to take itself too serious. I think it's just a really fun movie to watch.
It's another example, and again, I know you haven't seen Abigail, but it's another example of the VHS franchise giving this avenue for creative people to come in, get their feet wet directing, and go on to do great things because
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
this group is just another group that got the start at VHS
Mhm.
and had gone on to make fantastic movies for us to enjoy. So whether some of the VHS are obviously better than others, but whether you love that series or hate it, you got to appreciate the opportunity it creates.
The platform they've created for those artists to kind of prove themselves and then be able to get budgets for other movies that they can do.
Yeah, it's tremendous.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've seen this movie before, and I really enjoyed it seeing it again.
Yeah,
A
this
fun
is the
watch.
first time I've seen either of these movies, and I liked them both. I thought the pacing was great. Like, some movies you watch, like, oh, this is too long, this is dragging on. It could be that both these movies to me were just fun, right? Just running right through them.
Yeah, absolutely. And neither one's too long.
Yeah,
They tell the story, they get right to it, and they bring it to a conclusion. Just
Yeah.
really, really well done.
good
And
modern movies. Yeah,
a great way to look at badass females, something that I love seeing.
yeah, me too. Yeah, I highly recommend both of these.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, yeah, good episode. Good episode. We appreciate you watching, listening, however you're joining us. Again, if you could subscribe and hit like, we would appreciate it. But yeah, we love bringing you movies like this and topics like this, and we'll be back next time. We are the Weekly Horoscope. I'm Jerry. That's Matt, and we will see you again. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone.
Your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.